All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba for your weekend. That's how we're going to sit back. We're going to relax. You go to your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. We got the NFL Combine going on. We got franchise tags are being thrown all over the place with the National Football League. And most notably, some people would say, we have AEW Revolution this Sunday night. So joining us now is our pal. It's a SiriusXM NFL radio AEW reporter, Alex Marvez. Alex, thanks a lot for hanging out with us as always. I know this is a super busy week with the NFL, with AEW. Let's start out with a little NFL stuff. And you know what? We'll do a local angle here. So it feels like we're days, if not hours away from finding out about a Tua Tagovailoa extension. It seems that both sides are talking there. It certainly doesn't seem like there's any kind of animosity. It feels like they're going to get it done. Do you have that impression as well? And if so, what do you think that contract can look like?
Well, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? And the Miami Dolphins believe Tua Tagovailoa is the guy to get them to where they want to be. And that's that first Super Bowl since, 1984, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a minute here for this Dolphins squad. So listen, when we're talking about the truly elite quarterbacks, and I'm just not ready to put Tua in that category yet, but if we are looking at a deal upwards of $50 million a year, at least it secures the game's most important position for the Dolphins for years to come. Look, we can have the debate at some point, ZASLOW, about whether Tua truly is the guy that can elevate this Dolphins team. I quite honestly felt that there were times last year that he didn't do that. He played great football, and for so much of it, I mean, listen, he led the NFL in passing, and a lot to really like about Tua, but I also think back to the final 2 minutes of that Tennessee game on Monday night, and I think about where was Tua, like the great quarterbacks would have let it come back. Tua didn't. And the whole offense looked disheveled. You start looking at that game's most important position, like I talk about, it begins with Tua. So down the stretch, he did not play his best football, but the Dolphins are still committed to him. And quite honestly, if you're able to do something contractually that extends him, you're going to get some cap relief. And this is a Dolphins team right now that's really hamstrung. They're over the cap. They don't have any huge free agent plans to my knowledge, simply because their money's tied up elsewhere. So you're going to have to make do with what you have. You're going to have to hope that you can get a little bit more out of this draft than they did last year. Maybe the new coaches will like, Cam Smith a little better than the previous staff, and we'll see how that goes. But I would think, though, that it behooves everyone to get this contract extension done and secure Tua Tagovailoa for a variety of reasons.
Do you think it'd be more risky if a contract were not agreed upon this offseason? Would it be more risky for Tua or for the team?
Great question. I mean, in terms of financial loss for Tua, because he's not going to go anywhere the year after. You're talking about a franchise tag here, in the offing for the 2025 season. So ZASLOW, let's play this out here. You're looking at about $24 million, if I'm not mistaken, for a base salary in 2024. So let's add another $40 million, of maybe a little bit more in a franchise tag. So we're talking $60 million here over 2 seasons. That's fantastic, right? But when we're talking about guarantees in excess of $100 million with an extension, knowing that you have generational wealth, that your great-grandkids are still going to be living off what you did on a football field, it's really hard to turn that down. And I hate to say it, but until Tua strings together 2, 3, 4 seasons without any more concussions, you know how fragile life in the NFL can be, especially for him. So I think it behooves him to get a deal done, but I also understand his market value. I mean, look, the Dolphins have the leverage here, right? I mean, they really do. I mean, they can play this out. You just don't want to have your quarterback dealing with all of the stress of, are you really the guy in South Florida? Oh, and by the way, who would then be picking the quarterback in 2025? I mean, are we going to let Chris Greer go through this process again? I mean, he's been holding the general manager position for a while. He feels he has the right guy in Tua. So, if you truly want Chris Greer to run this team, and I think the Dolphins do, and he wants to sign Tua to an extension, let him do his job, get the money done, and we'll go from there.
Alex, what did you make of the player survey, the second annual player survey that came out a few days ago, where the Dolphins were all the way at the top as far as player rankings? The Kansas City Chiefs were all the way at the bottom. Now there was a myriad of different, categories. But what did you make of that?
Well, I mean, what it is basically a way for the players to complain about their team without having to use their names, right? And you see, look, the Dolphins' first-class organization, the way that they're run, right? I can say a lot of things about Stephen Ross, many of them not kind. But the one thing I will tell you is he is not afraid to spend money to make sure that his players, his employees are well taken care of and they have first-class building. I mean, I've been to the new facility, and I call it new because I'm an old guy who used to cover them up in Davie, when everyone was jammed into that, little area at Southeastern Nova University or whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, it was just different. So, ZASLOW, everything's state of the art. When you don't have state of the art stuff, yeah, your facility's not good. And the Chiefs are trying to change this. I mean, they are. They're trying to move forward, get a new building. I've been to the Chiefs facility, and trust me, it's nicer than a lot of them around the league. But I just think that's really what this survey is. I mean, it can be revealing about how, players feel about a particular coach or a particular owner, or just some personal things that go on, like, daycare and such on game day and things like that, where the players, believe that they're entitled to having this sort of courtesy from their home team. So by releasing this survey, what I think it's done, and I think it's been a very positive development from the NFLPA, it has resulted in changes. And it lets team owners know, that if you don't make these changes to help the players feel a little bit better about their standing, you're going to get called out publicly and you're not going to look too good.
What are you hearing about the Bears? And when do you think that we're going to get a resolution, at least on the Justin Fields front?
I think when the offer is good enough for Justin Fields, you will get the resolution to this topic. I really believe Caleb Williams will end up being the number one player drafted. I do believe that he's going to the Chicago Bears and they will move forward like that. They've seen 3 years of Justin Fields. Look, I don't know how much better Justin Fields is going to be getting in his NFL career. I would like to think that he still hasn't hit his ceiling. But you know what scared the heck out of me, ZASLOW, and you saw the game as well, Week 18 against the Green Bay Packers. Chicago was a team that was playing some really good football. Justin Fields was not playing good football in that game, and Green Bay was able to win. I mean, if you held the Packers to 17 points like the Bears defense did, think about it, Chicago should have won that game. Instead, the Bears put up 9 points. And Justin Fields just was not – he did not look good. He looked confused as to what the Packers were doing defensively. It's one thing if you're a rookie. This is year 3, right? And there's only so many times that he's going to be able to make plays with his legs before you start getting an injury history truly begin to build up with Justin. So, and you saw some of it happen last year when he had to miss some time as well. So I think the Bears are, it's not even just a cap relief that you're going to end up getting. It's just a new era, right? And now you can build around Caleb Williams, who's a very special college quarterback. I still think there's some growing up that he has to do in terms of dealing with the media. His approach to the combine is very interesting. I mean, ZASLOW, I don't know who his advisors are, so I have no, dog in this fight, so to speak. But by saying I'm only going to take physicals for the teams that may draft me, I don't even know if he understands what it is that he's doing. The reason the combine was started was to keep players from having to go to various hospitals when they visited each team. I worked with Gil Brandt for 15 years. Gil was the one who started this because Nolan Cromwell, the longtime Rams safety, came into the Cowboys facility during the pre-draft process with his hands full of medical folders. Every team he went to, he had to go get a physical. And, now with all these teams, they're going to put him through MRIs. They're going to do everything that they can. And that's going to take up a considerable chunk of time. So I'm not saying, look, that this makes Caleb Williams a bad human being or that he's not going to be a great NFL player. I just do think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Remember how coddled he was at Southern Cal. You'd have a loss by the Trojans, and suddenly Caleb Williams wouldn't be available to talk to the media. It doesn't work like that in the NFL. You have to have some accountability. There are going to be growing pains, but I think this is a Bears team that's really looking to peak in 2025. As they continue to rebuild from being the worst team in football, I think Caleb Williams will be a huge part of it.
And what do you make when you hear the term generational QB being thrown around in regards to Caleb Williams?
I mean, because it's draft season. So, ZASLOW, you're going to hear all this hype when it comes to these sorts of things, just like the overreaction to what happens at the NFL scouting combine. Hey, Tavondre Sweat, I am happy that the young man could run 5.27 seconds in the 40 at 366 pounds. But you know what? He's still too big. 366 is too big. You don't survive in the NFL. Just ask Mekhi Becton, okay? But we have people salivating over the, quote, athleticism of a 366-pound man. We get caught up in all this. I mean, if you need to go back, look at all the comments made about Zach Wilson. Look at all the comments made about players who just say Sam Darnold. I mean, we can go down the list. There's so many things that go into it. And the thing I worry about for Caleb Williams, quite honestly, Zaslow, is this. You have a coach in Matt Eberflus. Who's to say that his job is guaranteed beyond this season?
Right.
If Matt Eberflus goes, guess what? New offensive coordinator.
Yep.
Then because Shane Waldron probably wouldn't be sticking around. So all of a sudden, Caleb Williams in year 2 has to learn something completely different. And you have maybe even a new general manager. Who knows? So a lot of uncertainty there when it comes to that. But the generational quarterback talk, I mean, look, honestly, generational quarterback hype can go to someone who led his team to maybe an undefeated season or got his team close to a national championship. Where was Southern Cal last year? Oh, that's right. They weren't close to that at all.
Yeah. Alex, excellent job there with all the NFL, but you also wear another hat, of course. And this Sunday night, we got a really big-time show for AEW. AEW Revolution. I was at Revolution two years ago. I went to Revolution in Orlando. The first thing I want to ask you is, like, are we able to identify yet, or maybe will we ever identify, do the AEW pay-per-views, especially like, I guess they're the marquee ones, Revolution, All In, All Out, is there a weight to each of them the way that we have WrestleMania coming up, of course, next month? We know that's the biggest. We know Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. Revolution's like one of the OG pay-per-views for AEW. Do any of them mean more than the other on the calendar year yet?
I don't think so. I mean, but again, we're so young, it's 5 years in. And to be honest with you, and I don't know the answer to this, and I'm not criticizing anyone. We had a Face of the Revolution ladder match that was a part of, this show for years. Now this year we're not doing it. So I don't know. When you think about what the Royal Rumble was, what the Survivor Series was, Elimination Chamber when it comes to WWE, those are trademark events where you're getting a particular type of match. In this case, that's not the case, with Revolution, nor is it the case with a lot of our shows. And maybe it's because we don't want to back ourselves in a corner when it comes to how, the type of product that we're creating. But Zaslow, I heard this week from someone internally in our company, and I'm not betraying anybody or not going to get fined by Brian Danielson for this, but I do believe that this may end up being the most purchased pay-per-view show that we have had in AEW. I mean, the interest surrounding Sting in his final match is just so great. And what an incredible addition to our company. And I have to give Tony Khan a lot of credit for this. When Sting joined us in 2020, there was a lot of thought, what does he really have left? I mean, he's a 61-year-old man. What can we, with a bad neck, right? I mean, he had to retire because of stenosis. So what are we going to be able to do with him? And not only has he wrestled live, I mean, it wasn't like we did his first match was cinematic, but, he wrestled live. He has taken a beating. I mean, he has really gotten some bad bumps along the way, and yet he keeps coming back, and he has continued to wrestle, and he has truly remained the icon. And I just think what we have coming up on Sunday is so special. And what's awesome about it, Zaslow, is this combination of nostalgia. I've heard some big names who are going to be at our show. I'm not going to spill the beans. I want it to be a surprise for our fans, but I've heard some big names from the past are going to be there. So you get to see them, and you get to relive that, but you also get to be in the present, right? Which is Sting calling it a career. And this is really it for him. I mean, he is done. This is the final time you're going to see him wrestle. We do hope he comes by from time to time, but he's not, there are no plans, I understand, that, of him like being the commissioner or something like that going forward. So if you want to see the icon for the final time, you want to say your own personal goodbye, buy the pay-per-view or try to get a ticket in Greensboro. It's not easy, Zaslow. We've sold more than 16,000 seats. Now, I'm a huge Fish fan. They hold the record there, 23,000 people. We're not going to do that. Okay. But I can tell you, we do have one of the biggest crowds we've ever had at AEW. And I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest show of all time on pay-per-view.
I did not know that about you. So I will spend a moment on that with you for a moment here. I've seen Fish a bunch of times, maybe 6 or 7 times. I haven't seen them in a while, but I could tell you that, and I love concerts. I go to concerts all the time. I've never seen people who enjoy something more than Fish fans at a Fish show.
Yes. And listen, every morning I'm at the gym, when I do go, but I was there today, it's channel 29. I'm streaming my SiriusXM, and they are a fantastic live band. And yes, I'm a jam guy, so I do that. And I try to get to as many shows as possible. But, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that was like really peak. 2003 Fish. Before then, they went away and Trey got his act together, and now they're back rolling, and they really are the mega band and playing the Sphere, coming up in April. So that's obviously huge.
Wow.
They're the second band to play. U2 is the first, then them, and then, of course, Dead & Company is coming in May. And it happens to coincide with maybe, just maybe, an AEW pay-per-view back in Las Vegas. So we'll see how that plays out. Knock on wood, I'm hoping that's the case.
Let's talk a little bit about Sting here. I'm looking forward to, someone asked me on my show yesterday, what are you most looking forward to with Revolution this Sunday? I'm like, it's obviously Sting. I want to see what's going to happen. I'm a little nervous because he's been taking major bumps the last couple years. He is 65 years old. I don't want it to be like the wrestler with Mickey Rourke where he's trying to die in the ring, So like, no. I do get a little bit nervous where I see what Sting is doing there. Your favorite version of Sting over the years is which?
Well, I honestly, I really like the original Sting. And I just have a lot of personal history with him. It was 1989 or 1990. He had just started his first world title reign, and I was one of his first interviews while working at the Miami Herald. So he wasn't real comfortable talking with the media, but he was coerced into doing it. He's told, there's a big-time newspaper column. And I was a bit awestruck, to be quite honest with you. And through the years, I've interviewed him a lot more times, and I've gotten to know him as a friend. And I am just so impressed by what he's been able to accomplish, not only in the ring, right? One of the greatest wrestlers. I thought that, when Sting, had the transformation, the NWO stuff and all that, he was an incredible babyface, a great anti-hero. He caught a vibe and he rode with it and continues to this day. But just the person that he is, let's not forget, when Ken Shamrock, as we all know, a legendary MMA fighter, pro wrestler, Sting was working out at his gym and Ken didn't know he was a wrestler. Okay. It's about 20 years ago. And he only knew him as Real Estate Steve. Why is that? Because Steve Borton was awfully successful in his real estate career when he wasn't full-time in wrestling. And, the one thing about him, too, he really did it his way. He had a lot of opportunities to leave, go to the WWE. It wasn't right for him at the time. He just didn't feel like he wanted to do it. Finally, he took the bait. The money was too good. He went up there. His career didn't end the way that he wanted it. And to his credit, Tony Khan is helping Sting go out on such a high note. And what I'm hoping is, and I do not know how this match is going to unfold, but I just hope that maybe, just maybe, we get a little bit of all the different Stings through the eras. You know what I mean? Where maybe just at some point, something happens where, Sting goes from one Sting to the other Sting to the other Sting, right? As we continue to see him grow. And, and just that one last time you say goodbye to him. But he overcame so many challenges. You know about his situation in the 90s. He had substance abuse issues, overcame that. Born again Christian, very deep and devout in his faith. And someone who's always trying to lend a helping hand. I've seen him, assist so many people and be so nice to so many different folks. Darby Allin wrote an incredible column this week at the Players Tribune, where just raw, and that's what Darby is, right? And just explaining what Sting has meant to him and how selfless he was when those two were paired. Because I think Darby Allin, while he was a budding superstar, initially in AEW, I really felt Sting took him to the next level. And with Sting's departure now, I still think Darby's going to be at a higher spot, and I think going to grow even more. And I think a lot of that is due to the rub, so to speak, that he got from Sting.
I was always a WWF kid growing up, but I knew of the, NWA guys because I would always love picking up Pro Wrestling Illustrated in the, 7-Eleven or whatever, because I loved seeing the rankings. I wanted to see who was ranked where every month or whatever. And so I always knew of the guys like, I knew of Lex Luger, so I knew of Dusty Rhodes. Obviously, I knew of Ric Flair. And even though I wasn't watching them on a regular basis, I knew who they were because of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And then, of course, when they would come over to WWF, it's like, oh, yeah, I know a little bit about this guy. And Sting, who, of course, never made his way to WWF back then, it was always like, I didn't get to see a ton of his stuff. But as a kid, I also knew, like, oh, that's the cool guy, with the hair. And he's got the makeup, So even on the periphery, as a kid who was not watching NWA, I always knew of Sting as like that really cool wrestler that everybody loves.
And you think about it too, back at the Clash of Champions 1 that WCW put on opposite WrestleMania. And this was when, Jim Crockett Promotions and Vince McMahon were playing dirty with each other. Vince McMahon was messing with the Crockett's, affecting how many shows they can get on pay-per-view, how many distributors they had, and basically helped cripple the company, quite honestly, through his shrewd business maneuverings. Well, in this case, WCW fired back. On the day of WrestleMania, they put on a free show on TBS, headlined by Sting against Ric Flair in Greensboro, in this very same building. The match was amazing. It was a 45-minute draw. It helped elevate Sting, much like Sting elevating Darby Allin. Kudos to Ric Flair for the way that he helped elevate Sting. Even though Sting didn't win the match, he was really the true winner because he pushed Ric Flair to the limit in this incredible match that we're still talking about to this day. So I think that was just such a neat thing about Sting as well along the way. And if you ask me, what is your favorite Sting match, even though he's had so many incredible ones through the years, I think back to that one just because it just left such a permanent impression. It was at a time when you didn't get these types of matches on free TV. You know, things have changed so much now. Wrestling fans, I don't want to say they're spoiled because they're not, but there's so much product available. I mean, Zaslow, you and I would have never left the house had all of this technology existed, right? I mean, you think I used to trade tapes. I used to go to the post office. I would get tapes from Japan. I would get tapes from Calgary. I would get to Oregon. I mean, all these places to see different forms of pro wrestling. Now, it's worldwide. It's all available at your fingertips. And that's what's so amazing about it. And I'm just glad that this generation got to see Sting because we're talking 36 plus years here.
This generation will never know what it was like back then to wait for the day that, be it at, Payless Video or Blockbuster Video, the day, usually about a month or so later, that, Coliseum Home Video would release the pay-per-view. Oh my God, now I could finally watch it, because who the hell knew how to order pay-per-view back then? It was so foreign,
Yes.
and what it was like to show up to the video store that day and pick up those shows. Like, it's wild what it used to be like, And finally, I'll leave you with this, Alex. Do we know if Sting, Darby Allin, the Young Bucks, is it going to be the main event on Sunday night?
You have to. I mean, I'm not saying anything official, but how could you do anything else? Anything else would be, quite honestly, a letdown, even though this world title match coming up, Samoa Joe, Hangman Adam Page, the Red Hot Swerve Strickland. I mean, you could tell me that that's going to main event, and I couldn't complain, but I just think that, if we're going to send Sting off, to me, if I'm the booker, and God, thank God we're not, but I'm just saying that would probably be the way to go. But I would think that is probably the direction we're going in. Nothing's been declared official, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the company on that. But I would imagine that it could be quite the send-off for one Steve Borden as he moves on to the next step in his life.
Excellent job as always, Alex. Again, this Sunday night, pay-per-view, 8 p.m., AEW Revolution, Sting's final match, retirement match. Let everybody else know how they can hear you, of course, SiriusXM NFL Radio. Go ahead.
Late hits, usually 7 o'clock Eastern time on weekdays, except on Wednesdays when I'm at AEW Dynamite. And then, of course, on the weekends as well, 2 to 6 p.m. Eastern time normally. Also, my Twitter, at Alex Marvez, has my broadcasting schedule, if you will, for SiriusXM. And next week, obviously, Zaslow, the grind doesn't stop. We got franchise tags coming due. We're going to have a lot of roster movement as free agency inches ever closer. And, of course, fallout from the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine.
Great job, Alex. Thanks a lot for catching up with us. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Zaslow.